My name is Adam Johnson. I'm the Chief Deputy for the DuPage County Clerk's Office, and I'd just like to welcome all of you to our Vote by Mail Forum this evening. It's good to see so many members of the community coming out and taking an interest in the election process. In just a couple minutes, we are going to start a question and answer portion. I know a lot of you have already been submitting questions, but if you're a new arrival, we do have sheets of paper and pens in the back and a basket to deposit your questions in. We only have a couple of ground rules for tonight. One, just very basic, like all questions need to be appropriate and maintain decorum for a public forum, which, looking out at all of the fine faces in front of me, I don't imagine that's going to be a problem, but we do need to state that off the bat. And then second, as advertised, this is a vote by mail forum. Again, we have quite a few questions on the topic of vote by mail, so we are going to limit ourselves to vote by mail related questions tonight. So please, as you're submitting questions, keep in mind that we're going to be sticking to that topic. Before we begin the question and answer portion, I'm going to introduce County Clerk Jean Kazmarek, and she's going to give you some introductory comments.
Hello, everyone. I'm DuPage County Clerk Jean Kazmarek, and joining me is our election attorney, Deputy State's Attorney Pat Bond, and I would also like several of my staff to stand, and that would be Election Deputy Scott McKay and Vote by Mail Manager Stephanie Grunwald. First, I will discuss information recently released from the United States Post Office, then give you an overview of how we implement vote by mail in DuPage County. USPS announced earlier this year some changes that will impact mail ballots. First, ballots will not receive priority treatment. In the recent past, ballots were expedited through the system. Second, mail ballots will not be automatically postmarked in the beginning of the mailing process. They may be postmarked shortly before leaving a distribution center, which might take some time. And finally, ballots dropped in a USPS mailbox on Election Day will not be postmarked until the next day. One of the purposes of this forum is to ask the community for support in getting the word out. Return your mail ballot right away, and everything will be fine. Vote by mail applications can be received as hard copy applications or through the Election Division website. Voters can choose to apply for either the permanent vote by mail program or for only a specific election. Once received, Election Division staff review and enter the vote by mail applications. Applications can be rejected for any one of the following reasons. They're incomplete, they're missing a party or a signature or an address, the voter has not registered, and maybe they haven't registered with their current information, the voter's signature does not appear to match the signature in the registration file, and the application was received outside the valid timeline per state statutes. In the event that a vote by mail application is rejected, the voter is contacted and informed on how to rectify the situation. And note that I'm talking about applications here, not ballots. Once actual returned ballots are involved, everything is handled with bipartisan teams of election judges. At this time, DuPage County has roughly 97,000 voters on the permanent vote by mail program. Permanent vote by mail came into law in Illinois in 2022. The majority of ballots are printed and sent through Runbeck Election Services. Runbeck has been partnering with DuPage County since 2020. And depending on the election, DuPage County sends out between 70 and 130,000 mail ballots. DuPage County features ballot tracking. Once signed up, your first notice from Ballot Tracks will come at this stage telling you that your ballot is on the way. A minimal number of mail ballots are printed in office, and typically this applies to nursing homes, uva cava, that's military and overseas voters, and reissued ballots. Ballots can be returned to our office via USPS or Dropbox. If a voter is returning a ballot close to Election Day via the Postal Service, again, I'm going to be repeating myself tonight, it is highly recommended that he or she go inside the post office and have a postmarked manually stamped at the counter. Drop boxes are available during voting hours inside of every early voting site and polling place. And additionally, drop boxes can be found at the DuPage County campus. One drop box is in the parking lot on the south side of the 421 building where you probably parked tonight. One is just inside the 421 building, just outside the door there, and one is inside the election division office. Drop boxes are emptied and transported daily by bipartisan teams of election judges. Once returned to the election division, ballots are counted, labeled, and secured by these teams until they can be processed through the Agilis sorting machine, which is also a Runbeck product. USPS delivers ballots to 421 every day throughout this time, and ballots are secured until they can be processed through the Agilis mail sorting machine. Ballots pass through the Agilis mail sorter where a date stamp is applied and images are taken of the voter's signature. These images are then reviewed by bipartisan teams of election judges. Bipartisan teams compare each signature from the voter certification envelope against the signature on file in the voter registration system database. If one of the judges does not view the signature as a match, the ballot is challenged. Ballots can be challenged for one of the following reasons. The voter signature does not match. The voter's signature is missing. The voter did not provide appropriate ID when registering. And the voter registration does not match information provided, such as name or address change. Challenged voters are contacted with instructions on how to cure their ballot. The deadline to cure a challenged ballot is 14 days prior to 14 days post Election Day. And if you're signed up for Ballot Tracks, once your ballot has been accepted at this stage, you will receive a second alert. Once finished with signature verification, the ballots will be sent through the Agilis for a second pass. Vote-by-mail certification envelopes are milled open, and challenged ballots are separated from verified ballots. All verified ballots are secured until they can be processed. Challenged ballots are secured separately. When cured, a challenged ballot will be pulled and processed. A bipartisan team of election judges bring verified ballots to the auditorium for processing. Ballots are removed from the voter certification envelope and inspected for damage and incorrect markings. And incorrect markings include incorrect colors such as yellow, pink, red, green, or using incorrect utensils like pencil, crayon, highlighter, or glitter. Yeah, we see it all. Ballots are initialed and sorted into groups to be scanned into the central scan. Ballots that are damaged or contained incorrect markings are remade through Novus. To be remade, ballots are scanned into Novus. The image of the original damaged ballot is displayed on the left of the screen. And the reason why they would have to be fixed is because they can't pass through the scanner until they're fixed. On the right side of the screen, a bipartisan team of election judges mark the new ballot with the same selections as the original. The new ballot is printed out and placed with the other processed ballots to be scanned at central scan. Ballots are scanned then, and most ballots scanned are in groups of precincts and/or townships for organizational purposes, but they could be scanned in any order if needed. Once scanned, ballots are placed inside the white box and secured with filament tape. Bipartisan teams of election judges sign over the filament tape. In central scan, ballots are flagged for having overvotes. Overvotes are reviewed by a bipartisan team of election judges and adjudicated if needed. Central scan does not tabulate ballots, which is why ballots can be scanned prior to the close of polls on Election Day. When the time comes for ballots to be tabulated, the V drives, and these are the devices where the scans are stored, are removed and placed in the central count and then tabulated. V drives are accompanied by a bipartisan team of election judges when being transported from the auditorium to central count. Post-election, the postmarks of any ballots received via USPS after Election Day are reviewed by bipartisan teams of election judges. In order for a ballot to be able to be signature verified, the ballot must have a postmark of Election Day or prior. Ballots without a valid postmark or no postmark at all are segregated and secured separately from all these ballots. These ballots are not able to be cured. And for the benefit of anyone who might have come in late, I'm going to repeat the message about the USPS. USPS announced earlier this year that some changes will impact mail ballots. First, ballots will not receive priority treatment. In the recent past, ballots were expedited through the system. Second, mail ballots will not be automatically postmarked in the beginning of the mailing process. They may not be postmarked until shortly before leaving a distribution center. And finally, ballots dropped in a USPS mailbox on Election Day will not be postmarked until the next day. So please, if you leave tonight with one thing in your brain about what happened tonight, it's return that ballot right away. Thank you.
All right. Now we will begin the question and answer portion. Just a notice to everyone, we do have a hard out at 6:30 because the auditorium is going to be used for another event at 7 o'clock. So in the interest of time, we want to get as much information to you as possible. I imagine as we start going through these questions, there will be some duplicative requests, so we're going to try to move on to get as many new, unique questions to our panel up here to get as much information as possible. All right. This one has a couple different questions, so I'll just start with the first one. Why don't the vote-by-mail envelopes stay with the ballots?
So my name is Patrick Bond. I'm appointed as special counsel by the DuPage County State's Attorney, Robert Berlin, to oversee the elections on behalf of the DuPage County Clerk, Gene Kazmarek. I've been representing this election authority since 1995 when there was an election commission, the predecessor to it being rolled into the clerk's office. I also represented the Aurora Election Commission while it was in place, and I serve as general counsel for an international organization of county officials, including election officials. So my job is to make sure that elections are conducted pursuant to state and federal law, and to ensure that the process is consistent with best practices. So, question?
Why don't vote-by-mail envelopes stay with the ballots?
It comes down to the vote-by-mail ballots and envelopes stay together if that vote-by-mail ballot envelope has not been qualified for the reasons that the clerk indicated. The reason they're not kept together is for the integrity of the secrecy of the voter, so that ballot envelope, I know exactly when the ballot certification envelope has the signature of the voter on that. That is the mechanism that is used to qualify that particular voter. So that has the exact who the voter is, it's got the voter's address, and now you open it up and you can tell exactly who the voter is. So the process, in order to preserve the integrity of the ballot, the process is that the ballots are qualified, the envelopes are qualified, the certification before anything is done with those. Those which have been qualified are segregated from those which have not been qualified for some of the reasons that were stated, and then that voter is notified if there's an issue with respect to that. Once they have been qualified by the bipartisan team of judges, what they do is they take, and some of you in this room I know have been participating as election judges or as poll watchers, where they have the signature, the digitized signature on the screen, and we have access to all of the voter records. State statute allows you to look at any signature that's on file with the election authority to make a determination. The bipartisan team of judges makes a determination looking at the scanned image that had gone through the mail sort of the Agilis machine. They're looking at the actual signature on the certification envelope, comparing that to the signature on file with the election authority. If there's a consensus that those match, they're not handwriting experts. The statute doesn't call for that.
So Pat, can I interrupt you, because what you were starting to say leads right into the next question on the sheet, so I'll just go ahead and read it and you can kill two birds with one stone.
Right. So the reason is that to protect the integrity of the voters' choices and who they voted for.
The next question on the sheet, when a judge sees multiple ballots with the same style signature, or I've heard a scenario where the spouse signs the envelope and ballot with their own name for their spouse, and the judges call the voter to tell them, why isn't that illegal? So that leads into what you're just saying about the qualification of signatures and how that process works.
Yeah, you cannot, the ballot certification envelope is a certification from the voter. The voter and only the voter can sign that. You can't sign it on behalf of another person, even if they give you authority or permission to do so, because that is used as the basis for making that comparison. So if there are, and there has been somewhere, it appears as though, and I'm fairly certain everybody here has seen nominating petitions. We have seen more than anyone can imagine over the course of these years. But you see on there, maybe Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Hope there's no Joneses in the room, but their signatures look very similar, as does Jimmy Jones and Sarah Jones, and they all signed from the same address. The same is true when that happens in connection with these ballot certification envelopes. Those are flagged. The judges see that. They take a look at that signature. They can also look and see who else is at that address and do a comparison and say, no, this looks more like Mrs. Jones has signed for Mr., Jimmy, Jamie, whoever else I said was in the Jones family. So it's done for that purpose.
Okay. These next two questions are functionally the same, so I'll just read them both in one shot. What happens to ballots received after the deadline, but the postmark is stamped by Election Day? And what happens to ballots received after Election Day? Is the voter notified what physically happens to the ballot?
Okay, so let me tell you, first of all, if it is postmarked and received within that time period, postmarked by Election Day and received within that 14-day period, it is that ballot is a valid ballot and ultimately is going to be tabulated. If it's postmarked on Election Day, comes after that time frame, that ballot is not properly qualified and the envelope never is opened and the ballot's never removed from the envelope. So those are all segregated. Those are ballots that the clerk had indicated cannot be cured at that point. The same is true with something that comes in with a postmark after Election Day. You cannot cure that defect. So those are segregated as well. And the ballot never comes out of the envelope. The ballot only comes out of the envelope once it is milled or opened, which was a lot better than somebody taking a letter opener trying to do it. Sometimes they would rip the ballots or damage the ballots, so this is a cleaner way of doing it. They stay in there, they're not milled and removed until they've been properly qualified. Okay,
as I said, we're going to limit our questions to vote by mail. This question managed to sneak a little, side commentary. That's probably the only way you're going to get a non-vote by mail comment in here. But how do mail-in ballots assist voters of all parties to execute their right to vote when they cannot get to a polling place due to physical limitations, work schedules, and now with our early voting site eliminated at Stratford Square and not replaced?
Well, it was eliminated at Stratford Square because Stratford Square doesn't exist anymore, so it was hard for us to have a spot there. We tried looking at other locations. It's designed to vote by mail. Whether you agree with the concept or not, it was designed to increase the voter participation in order to make it easier for voters who, whether they had mobility issues, you've got 8 kids running around the house trying to get time in your schedule to go over and get to a poll location. There's a lengthy process for you to be able to apply for, receive, or you can get on a list for permanent vote-by-mail ballots that get mailed directly to your house. It gives the voter an opportunity to take a look at the ballot, see who's on the ballot. Is it someone who they don't know much about? And then they can take a look and do some research on who that candidate is or those candidates, and then they can make an informed choice. Sometimes people go into a poll location, and we don't have any COD representatives here, do we? It's a great organization. I taught there for 6 years, but does everybody know who your representative is on that board? So it gives you a chance to look and see who you're going to vote for and gives you an opportunity to get it back in and with that ample lead time. The early voting locations are available for that purpose, they're geographically located throughout the county in an attempt to make it as convenient as possible for the voters in those different communities. We work with local organizations and different municipal entities and local governments to say we really need your park district facility for this purpose so you can serve your residents in that area that are registered voters. So we try and give as many options as possible. If you recall, some of you might be old enough to recall there was a limitation on absentee ballots. You had to demonstrate that you were not available, you were out of the country. Sometimes you had to show up with, I've got my ticket here to go to, I'm a snowbird, I'm going to Florida. Those restrictions have been removed with these various options. You simply have to ask for a request a ballot. And again, there's still the same safeguards that were built in for absentee. It just is open to more people. You don't have to make excuses why you couldn't get to a poll location.
Again, you were just leading into another question. This is sort of a hypothetical, but it's related to what you were just saying. Eliminating vote by mail affects the rights of people with disabilities. What replacement accommodations will be made? So obviously, vote by mail is not being eliminated, but if you could talk to a little bit to how it does, protect the rights of people with disabilities further. Yeah, and there are different options if someone does have a disability, if they want to do vote by mail. We've had some individuals have sight impairment. There is an affidavit if someone is going to assist that voter that they have to provide information that they had rendered assistance. I will tell you from this international organization, they've been struggling with what can you provide
for those with disabilities. And the sad reality of it is that there's a number of disabilities. If you've got sight impairment or some other, you've got mobility impairment. So to get a one-size-fits-all really isn't out there, and the technology's not there. And everything that is you see when you go into the elections, all of that equipment has to be certified by the State Board of Elections. Some vendors will pay the cost to put their product through the certification process. When you have some smaller niche type things with someone with a particular sight impairment or some mobility impairment, it's expensive for these, and I'm not apologizing for them, but it's expensive for those companies, and the government can't force them to come up with strategies or solutions, but it's expensive for them to get the technology certified so that it is safe and it's protects the voters' rights. So every effort is made, and if somebody does need assistance, you can ask for assistance at a poll location. If you can't get into the poll location, we do have election judges, bipartisan team of election judges will bring that ballot out to you at that poll location.
So Scott and Stephanie, I think one or both of you would be the most informed to answer this particular question. Are there any other counties or states that use the same hardware and software to vote by mail as we do in DuPage?
As I think Adam or Gina had explained earlier, we use a company called Runbeck, and the reason why we have selected Runbeck is because they are a professional company that prints millions of ballots all throughout the country. They've been a proven veteran in that. I don't know if you guys remember in DuPage County several years ago when they had the fat ballot and the fat ender card. No discredit to the company, but one of the problems that they had was that they were used to perform for banking. They were cutting magnets. There was multi-purposes. The nice thing with Runbeck is they're a professional company that works just in the election space.
And in terms of other customers and Runbeck's sort of reach throughout the country?
Yeah, they've printed all over the country. I mean, their website provides all of their clients.
And then similarly, Hart, the actual voting system, a little bit about their other customers in both the state and country.
Yeah, Hart has installed in the state of Illinois, I think they've got up to 21 clients in Illinois. The main hubs of tabulation throughout the country are ES&S, Hart, and Dominion. Those are the main companies. But just for the record, we don't have anything that has anything to do with Dominion for those that may have questions about that. So.
All right. When ballots are mailed in, and the clerk already touched on this, so just if there's anything to add, because I think this was discussed in our introduction, but when ballots are mailed in, how are they seen by members of both parties? Are some mail-in ballots thrown out? So maybe a little bit on the bipartisan teams, what their process is.
Yeah, the first thing when they come in, what you've got a bipartisan team of election judges really at every step of the process before anything happens. They make sure that they are qualifying those ballots, so when they come in, they have, and poll watchers are welcome. We've had a number of you who have served as both election judges and poll watchers are welcome to observe. I will put the caveat that observe only and not participate in that, but they can see the process from when the ballot comes in, and we give notice on the website that says when those will be processed. The party chairs are given a notice as to when those will be processed, so anybody who wants to watch that, it is done so it's under view of the public. It's in the basement here. It's not the greatest environment, but it is there for them to go through. As soon as they come in, they start to qualify those ballots. Nothing is tabulated until Election Day when the polls close, but the processing all goes in advance of that. Otherwise, you'd be waiting quite a long time to try and get any early results. So they're done from the very get-go. As soon as they come in, the bipartisan team of judges starts that process that Clerk Kazmarek had outlined earlier.
I will defend the integrity of our basement. A lot of work has been done to clean that up, to make some nice workstations for the judges. All right.
That's like saying my 1968 car is better than a 62 car. Yeah, it's better, but still not the greatest environment, but we work with it.
Well, they're both nicer than my Honda minivan. All right. Why do you accept so many variations of signatures for a single voter? Why not have voters update signatures in person?
Well, two reasons. One, I don't know that they would do it. But secondly, because I don't know if anybody, may show of hands, how many signs they're, everything the exact same way each time they sign something. Well, you're an anomaly. I recently had a surgery. I can't sign anything at this point, but and the reason is because you get a signature. Sometimes it'll be somebody is doing it. You've seen it on nominating petitions. Somebody comes to your door in the winter or snow or rain or whatever. You're scribbling on a clipboard. You know, people have it on their kitchen counter. People are signing it at different locations. So that's the reason. And the state statute was amended not too recently ago, where it allowed for it clarified, it always allowed for, but clarified that all of the voter signatures that are in the clerk's voter record history are fair game for the judges to look at. Now, to that point, they look at the most recent, and then if there's any differences before they disqualify that, they go in through a process where they go a little deeper, a little deeper, a little deeper to see if there is one that matches. And that's what's required. There is an adjudication process that is required under the election code for them to do that. So somebody doesn't get it dismissed out of hand just because I was in a hurry to get it in and I signed it really quickly and I didn't use my Catholic school cursive that I should have.
All right. This is related to some stuff we talked about, but just to put a finer point on it. What prevents parents from registering their kids for vote by mail, then subsequently voting for them? Physical appearance at polling place prevents this.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing your registration, you've got to provide identification that when you're registering. So, if somebody wants to register for their kid, they can bring the kid in, but ultimately, what we're looking at is the identification of that individual. So they're going to give their name. We have to know what their date of birth is. So they generally bring in the identification for that information.
All right. Stephanie, you might have some specific knowledge on this. How do you get picked to be a vote-by-mail judge at the administration building?
So this is a popular question we get. So I don't know if it's just because they really like coming to vote by mail or they just want to be involved. But we tend to actually only have anywhere from 8 to 10 people doing vote by mail judging. So that'd be 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans roughly. So we have typically used most of the same people from election to election because then they're familiar with the process. We know they're available because sometimes it's weird times. They've come to us from different party recommendations. For example, in 2020, when there was 3 panel teams of judges and there was about 75 to 100 people, those were all party recommendations that came. And we've gotten a lot of people from that as well. So at this time, we're not really looking for anyone else because we have the full-fledged amount that we need. But they are all registered and active in the party.
Thank you. When were permanent vote-by-mail enrollees last checked against 1, moved NCOA, 2, changes in tax exemption homestead list from Chief Assessment Office, 3, state death record index? That might be a Stephanie question as well.
So for the move NCOAs, we get those 4 times a year. And so what would happen?
Can you explain me for those who don't know what NCOA is?
Yeah, so NCOA is called the National Change of Address. It comes from the post office. We receive them from the State Board of Elections 4 times a year. They're processed, and then voters are sent a letter saying, hey, we got information. It's much nicer language than that, but hey, we got information that you moved. Do you want to confirm this change, or do you want to reject the change? So then your registration gets updated from that. Your ballot, if you were on permanent, would get sent there. If it said you moved outside of the county, whether that's outside of the state or within the state but in a different county, you would become inactive and sent a mailing, and at that point you would not be getting a ballot because you are in an inactive status. For death records, we receive those from the DuPage County every month, and then we cancel people based on a death certificate. Also, like, I see a lot of people already telling me I'm wrong. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. We also do tend to go through the records and try to clear and get as much information as we can from other jurisdictions to cancel people. We cannot cancel anyone without the death certificate or notification from the next of kin, unfortunately.
Okay.
What? In writing.
All right, thank you. Does the clerk's staff test and inventory mailed ballots once printed to avoid mistakes being mailed? Where does this happen? What is your security process for mail ballot, total chain of custody, count of printed and number mailed and number not mailed? So I guess tackle that in different parts, I guess. Does the clerk's, okay, we'll start with the first one. Does the clerk's staff test and inventory mail ballots once printed to avoid mistakes being mailed? So I assume that's reviewing the actual ballots is how I would interpret that question.
Yeah, so,
Is it the ballot or is it the address and the voter? I'm not sure I understand that.
My question is the ballot itself,
Okay.
security of the ballot, will it work?
sure. I can kind of touch on that briefly.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So briefly, and you obviously probably have a lot of experience from your background, we have a procedure what we call test decks. So we run the ballots through. The nice thing with the Vote Anywhere in DuPage County, once the database is locked down, we would know pretty quickly if there was any issues. So we do test all election day ballots and vote by mail ballots.
Okay.
Yep, that's with the test deck. So we have the same paper that we run it on. That's the same bonded paper. So we're able to test during that. That is not. We go through a company called Governmental Business Systems for that. We do a first occurrence so that we are able to test through them also. So it is, yeah.
And then the security process for mail ballot, chain of custody, count of printed and number mailed and number not mailed. Pat, Stephanie, who would?
I can talk about the chain of custody,
Okay.
whether there's an assessment of those that have been mailed and what the number. I know we do have records of that.
Like, I can tell you how many got mailed.
So, yeah, I'm not sure if I understand. Is that how do we know how many got mailed and were requested?
Well, why
and
don't
got
you
sent
talk
out?
about mail ballot, chain of custody a little bit, and then we can
Yeah,
address
the mail
that.
ballot, once you, if you're on either the permanent list or you can make a request for a vote by mail for one particular election if you'd like. And then once you make that request, and if it's permanent, you're going to get the ballot. We've got a record of all those permanent voters where a ballot was sent out to that individual. And then we have the same chain of custody when it comes back, and that'll be returned in that ballot certification envelope, and the ballot certification envelope is going to be then qualified in the fashion we discussed earlier, and those are all then secured in this building with all of the records or all the other election information.
If I may edify, Pat, I was asking based on the 97,000 people that got ballots and permanent vote by mail. If Runbeck prints a 97,000 ballots, they're not printed right here in DuPage County, right? Where are they physically printed, and how do you do that security to know that's what they printed?
So we do send them out to Runbeck. They're based in Arizona. They're printed there. They keep detailed counts throughout their printing process. And then the envelope that the ballot has a unique identifier on the envelope, so you're able to make sure that duplicates weren't sent as well.
So do they mail them for you?
Yes, in order to mail bulk mailings, you have to have them also pre-sorted, which is not something we would be able to do, so they also do that to present them to the mail.
Okay. All right. For vote by mail signature verification, is it true, as of 2020 election, that if one of 3 election judges, 1 Democrat, 2 Republicans, say the signature looks good, even if the other 2 object, then it does not matter, the signature is okay? We were told Scott McKay said it is not majority rule. If only 1 judge okays it, the signature is approved in DuPage County.
Well, if there's a dispute between the election judges as to whether or not the signature is qualified and it goes through that, there's an adjudication process then where you've got another judge comes in and then the other judge makes a determination as to whether or not, based on the signatures that are on file, whether or not that particular signature for that voter is acceptable.
And was there a specific change in the law? Yes, I think there was a question about the 2020, there were specific,
So that was referencing, it was legislation that was passed for the 2020 general election only, in which that was a 3-panel of election judges, and it would be 1 from one party and 2 from the other, and as long as one judge said it was okay, you had to accept the ballot. That was for the 2020 election only, and was only practiced here in the 2020 election as by law.
and again, that was not a
And I'm
DuPage
sorry,
County policy, that was state law.
Yeah, that was not a policy of the election division of the county clerk's office. That was, I misunderstood that they meant just a restriction. That was the very first, it was it was only in place, and the legislation was very clear that that process was only in place for that election and no other elections. And it's got the adjudication process that I just spoke to as to the other. There was a legal presumption in the law that said that it was a preference for all ballots submitted to be counted, and this was the method by which that was accomplished. There were questions that were raised as to whether or not that was fair, and if that was really doing the necessary comparison and adjudication, and that had a very short life. It was only intended for that one time, and the process that's here now is a much more secure process in terms of ensuring that those signatures are properly validated before the ballot is taken.
And I just will reemphasize, our legal counsel's, opinion of, a positive change in the law notwithstanding. That's beyond the scope of any, authority the clerk has or that our staff has to, follow the law or not follow the law based on, our opinion or anyone else's opinion of the policy. So if it's the law for the 2020 election, we follow the law for the 2020 election. If the law gets changed moving forward, we follow the laws that's changed moving forward. Next question. For undeliverable vote-by-mail ballots, where do they get returned to?
So those are returned to our office by the post office. A lot of times there will be a yellow sticker, it's called a Nixie sticker, saying that the ballot was undeliverable, and then it'll give a reason why. We do try to go through those and see if it was an error on our end, whether it was a registration that didn't catch up in time when the ballot data was pulled, or if a number was perhaps mistyped, if it was a mailing address. And then that ballot is voided, so that way if the voter goes to the polling place to vote instead, they would be able to because they did not get their vote-by-mail ballot. And then after the election, this will trigger a letter that's sent to the voter saying, hey, we got this mail back from you, or we got mail that was sent back to us because it couldn't be delivered, and then the new letter they get is forwardable, so it should reach the voter at the new address so they can correct their registration.
And this question is very similar, but if there's any specific to add, what is the process for undeliverable ballots? Are they recorded in election management systems? Where are they stored? Is there any additional context, or you feel that's covered by?
They are secured, and like I said, it gets voided in the election registration system.
All right. I'm sorry, what?
Are there statistics kept of how many?
There was not specific statistics kept of how many.
But we do have the data recorded. So.
Can you get a report?
Do we have that? Is that right? Recent arrests of landlords or property managers filling out vote-by-mail ballots mailed to residents of building and using to vote shows fraud is occurring, even though we are told it's not. Who is policing this?
Ultimately, if the state's attorney's office is responsible, and if there's anything that we detect from our end, and we've got people at this table who have been able to find those irregularities and people who are doing things they're not supposed to. We had somebody who sent in ballots on behalf of, vote-by-mail ballots on behalf of their family members. That person was ultimately, became very apparent, that was turned over to the state's attorney's office. That individual was prosecuted for that crime. We've had a number of them. Anytime that there are irregularities that come in with respect to that, where you see what people have called as ballot harvesting, we take a look at that to see, is this an apartment building? Is this a single-family home that's got 30 registered voters at it? And that and any information where there's anything that's suspicious gets turned over. The state's attorney's office has a division of theirs, which is their investigations division, and they take that information and then they do their investigation and ultimately make a determination if there is a violation of the law and if it's a crime, and they have successfully prosecuted a number of individuals.
Stephanie, I was correct when I predicted this question and talked to you a couple hours ago. Describe your chain of custody when it applies to ballot pickup at post office and drop off to county building. Who goes? Is there a log on both ends? So that's not really something that we generally do, but if you could just clarify.
So typically, the mail stays in the custody of the post office and it's delivered here. There are, I can think of specifically 2 instances where we do go to the post office as well ourselves, and that would be on election day, we make a second pickup once they're done sorting the mail in the evening, so we have everything in our custody that we can before the polls close on election day. And anytime that we send people to the post office, it's going to be a member of staff and then a bipartisan team of election judges that's going with them. And then they are all in the presence of the ballots for the entire trip until they're secured back in this building.
All right. Since the law was changed to allow vote-by-mail application signature to be allowed as legal signature, how do you justify continuing to mail out hundreds of thousands of applications every election? Isn't this opening up massive fraud?
Well, the ballots are mailed to those who have properly requested an application. There's a process at the application stage of it. So if someone sends in an application and the information does not match with the voters' records, that individual is not going to get a vote-by-mail ballot delivered to them. They will get notified if there's some curable aspect to it. If there is not, then they would not receive a ballot. Those who are signed up for, which is by statute, if they signed up for what's been called as the permanent vote by mail, they will get a ballot sent to them in each and every election. The ballot will go to those individuals without the application, but when it comes back, it goes through that same verification process with a bipartisan election judge team going through those.
All right, what is your policy for counting vote-by-mail ballots postmarked 1 or 2 days after the election, given the recent announcement by USPS?
The policy won't change because the law hasn't changed. The USPS's process may have changed. And by the way, there were times that if you dropped it off at the Wheaton Post Office, it didn't make it to Carroll Stream for 2 or 3 days anyway. But if it's not postmarked by Election Day, regardless of how that came about, whether it was the fault of the voter acting too late or the fault of the post office, if it does not have a postmark and it went through the USPS, we are not allowed to count that ballot, so it never makes its way out of the envelope. We have a picture of the envelope that shows what the postmark date on that.
It does not show the postmark picture.
It's got the Agilis date on it. But we segregate all of those envelopes if they're not postmarked in time. And again, we have bipartisan election judges make that determination. And sometimes it's challenging because if anybody's had a copier that's running low on toner, we've seen that come up where you've got, it's difficult to read the postmark, but it's checked to make sure that it is postmarked on or before Election Day. And that's one of the reasons that they go send out the bipartisan team with election staff to the post office to get the most recent ones that come in.
If there's no postmark, you still accept the date inside the certificate envelope?
If there is no postmark and it's been received in-house we have it, in other words, there's no postmark on it, and whether it came through USPS or another source, and we have it in this building on or before Election Day, that does get processed and tabulated.
All right. One programming note, we are making pretty good progress getting through our questions. We do still have paper and pen in the back, so if anyone wants to, add any more questions, we do still have the opportunity to do so. All right. Have security cameras been added to the auditorium for ballot and election worker processing and after-hours protection?
To my knowledge, the county has not added security cameras to this building. They have provided with restricted access to this building when the ballots or the equipment is in this building. They restrict access to people to be able to, those doors are locked. You need a swipe card to get in. There's a read as to who was in here, when they were in here, and for what period of time that they were in this building. If we do have, when it is open, when we're processing the ballots, vote-by-mail ballots, all of those people who are here have to be signed, they have to be sworn, and then they have to give information as to who they are when they're here, and if they leave for lunch or from a break, these doors are locked.
And
So
there
they
are security
secured.
cameras.
The security cameras on the outside of the
auditorium.
building, to identifying who, if anyone, comes into this, into the auditorium.
Okay, I'm going to read this question next because I like it. When will you pay your staff more asking for a friend? And no, I had nothing to do with that. That's not vote by mail related, but I appreciate whoever is looking out for our staff. All right, next question. Can the outgoing ballot mail drops be made locally, i.e. Carroll Stream?
So as Stephanie stated earlier, they keep all of the ballots together when they do the runs for us. So our initial run for this particular election will be 60,000 for the first vote by mail out.
So, and I guess a detail I did forget to share is that, so the final day to request a vote by mail is that Thursday before Election Day. The last drop we do with Runbeck is the previous Friday. That gets overnighted to us and we drop it locally on Monday. And then everything else is printed in-house and dropped locally here. So any sort of like catch-up speed is taken care of at that point.
Yeah, but I think the main question they're asking is when they come from Arizona, is that the question, is the person who wrote?
Okay. So, bulk
Yeah.
goes all over the country.
Yeah, so they are all shipped to the main hub here in DuPage County is the Carroll Stream location. Yeah.
All right. What happens to surrendered mail-in ballots? Voter votes in person and surrenders ballot. Is there an R&D present?
There's election judges are in the poll locations. If they surrender their ballot, those are put in a secure envelope. We've got a system that will, if they vote in person, it automatically shows that they were provided a ballot and that ballot was voted. So if the ballot is surrendered, we retain custody of that ballot. It goes into the I don't know what's it called. In the surrendered ballot carrier pouch, very identifiable, so that those are brought back on election night. Those are brought back with the other live ballots. Those are not tabulated. The system would show that the particular voter had voted in person and had surrendered there's an affidavit when they're surrendering that on the poll pad. If you've gone in the poll location, it identifies that they have surrendered their ballot and they were issued a new ballot.
One other side note on the surrendering portion, on our poll pads, it's updating every 30 to 40 seconds, so there is no time lapse, it's a nice component, which thanks to the county allowing us to purchase that, it's come light years ahead.
And we actually tested that. There was one of the attorneys for candidates or the party, I can't remember exactly who he was representing the Republican Party. We did a demonstration with an actual voter and showed that the voter had voted in the poll location at the fairgrounds, came over here with an attempt to have a vote by mail. It showed up instantaneously. So I think I don't know exactly what the time, but it's within a minute or a minute and a half. It's a very quick registration of that transaction. So if anybody who thinks, well, I'm going to put it in the mail and get it to go, and I'm going to go run in there and vote at the last minute, if it's received in-house, that vote by mail, that voter will show that the ballot has been received, and if they went to a poll location, they would be denied the ability to file their, to vote another ballot. So there's a safeguard to protect them.
Somebody had a question back.
If I have this incorrect, I'm an election judge. When someone comes in and they surrender their ballot, don't we have the voter put a big S or put big X's through that ballot before we seal it up? And then that way we give them reassurance that that ballot's never going to be.
There's a spoiled ballot sticker that goes on there, and then it's put into like the spoiled ballot surrendered area, or like pouch. Maybe previously people wrote that, but there's a special sticker for it.
All right.
Voter that ballot is never going to be counted. We physically make it so that they realize that's never going to be scanned. It's never going to go through the scanner.
Yeah.
So just so those who couldn't hear it, an election judge, and thanks for your service, it indicated that in the past practice there was a big S for surrender that was placed on that ballot. The process is now we use a sticker so that ballot cannot be processed, and it's in a segregated envelope. So the ballots that are surrendered or spoiled do not make their way back. They come back here, they're secured. They never make their way back to where the ballots are actually going to be tabulated.
All right, so we've already answered the first part of this question. Are there two judges, both parties, looking at mail-in signatures? And Stephanie, you did already indicate that most of our vote-by-mail judges are long-serving, but just, Pat, as a matter of legal principle, how long as voter to determine party affiliation? What is the law on that point?
There is no law on it, which is very interesting. In Illinois, as you know, you don't declare your party affiliation. Your party affiliation is determined when you pull a ballot in a primary election, and it'll determine whether you're an R or a D. If the case law has talked about, this is respect to solely in connection with a candidate. If you want to switch parties, the courts have said you're locked into a party during the election cycle. They made up that phrase, election cycle. That's nowhere in the code, but election cycle has been interpreted by the courts to mean primary general. And so those of you who are First Amendment supporters say, well, I might change my opinion during the course of the primary to the general. And so we will allow a person who has a change in party affiliation, if they wish to, they would have the ability to then fill out an affidavit that they are affiliated with this party, and then we have, if they want to serve as an election judge, again, the standard as to candidates versus those who are serving as election judges, we have them sign an affidavit as to their party affiliation, if there's any question about it or if they're seeking to change that. We do the same process for student election judges. They are not yet registered voters, so they haven't had an opportunity to vote in a primary election, so they've made no party declaration or affiliation, and we have them fill out an affidavit or certification for party affiliation.
What if the party doesn't want the judge to act as a judge on the party's behalf?
So the question is, what if the party does not want someone who is affiliated with that party to act as an election judge as a representative of that party? Then there's a process, it's antiquated, but there's a process where the election judges are actually certified and confirmed by the circuit court. So we post notice of the election judges and anyone who has cause to say that person should not serve in that capacity for various reasons. We've had people say, well, we don't like their political ideology or whatever. That's not a reason. They're not qualified to serve in that capacity. So you would have to go through that process and have a basis for the judge to present to a judge, and have the judge say, not just because they're not a loyal member of the party or an active member of the party or a hardworking member of the party, it would have to say that they are truly not affiliated with that party, or they've got some other, character flaw where they've robbed banks in the past, or they've got an issue with something of that nature. But other than that, if their voting record indicates they're affiliated with a particular party, that is the only information that we can use to determine what the party affiliation is when setting up the bipartisan team of judges.
All right, I'm just gonna cut in right here. I'll let you finish where we start, but then we're going to try to restrict it to the written question, so we just can keep some control over the flow of the conversation.
Well, County, at the poll or the election judges, when you go into early vote and get to vote, they no longer have to have a badge with their name or their party. So you have no idea, really, and we have precincts where there haven't had two-party representation because things happen. People don't show up, people get sick. I'm assuming that it's the same in DuPage County. Do they at least have a first name, and do they put their party on the badge?
Well, I don't know what they do in Will County. In DuPage County, the law changed where because election judges were getting challenged, and we had someone who was actually challenged an election judge, disregarded the election judge's direct orders, was filming a voted ballot, which is a felony. That person was prosecuted, and I think just recently was sentenced. In that connection, we found that it was turned over to the state's attorney. The law did change to allow for election judges, to have complete control over what goes on in the precinct, and they are not required you're not required to have their names. What we do in DuPage, and again, I don't know what they do in Will County, what we do in DuPage when they're doing it, we have, if you were in grade school and you had a little American flag on your desk, that would be put out there to say the Pledge of Allegiance. We use a little something like that. It's got an R, or it's got a red flag and a blue flag, and the red flag is in front of the Democratic representative, and the blue flag and the Democratic, and the R in front of the Republican representative. So you know what the party affiliation is. What did I say? Yeah. Oh, I thought we were talking about vote by mail. If you're talking beyond that, in the poll location, no, we don't have that same process.
All right, so we're gonna stick to vote by mail. So if you have questions about polling place procedures, we can perhaps discuss that at a different time. All right, so this question, I think the answer is just going to be not under our purview, but officially, how are the ballots secured at the post office? What security measures are in place?
I don't know. I mean, it sounds like a horrible answer, especially coming from a lawyer, but it's secured the same way your tax return that you file if you file it. It's secured the same way as your bank statement if you still get a paper bank statement. Well, it's secured in some fashion because the mail's there. I don't know what that is. That's a USPS. We don't have any control over that. But we've not, I don't know what else to say. We don't know exactly how it's secured, but you can't just walk in and start grabbing letters out of the post office. They're, just from the times I've been there, there's an area, a secure area in the post office. Are those treated any different? I don't believe there's any difference. We did have meetings with the post office. We tried to meet with to try and see if we could find out a way where we could have that kind of segregation, and they don't recognize as the vote by mail as having any higher priority than any other mail. So it gets treated the same as all the rest.
And I'll just chime in similar to the point I made earlier. Our office follows the law as dictated to county clerks. So, vote by mail is a part of the Illinois election process. We have mandates for our office to follow. The post office and its internal procedures, while everyone is certainly capable of forming their own opinions of that. We cannot speak to that. We cannot control that. We can only, follow the law as it applies to the ballots when they arrive in our custody. When people, I'm not sure, I don't know, does not quite apply. I can't quite read this word. Kevin, it's you. When people do something by vote by mail, by computer, register, thank you, sorry. Yes, when they register to vote by mail by computer, is the computer IP address tracked? How is this secured so we know the right person signed up and not a third party doing it for them?
Well, I think this is part of, wasn't there a FOIA question on that before?
I don't think it was ever answered.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that from our perspective, the IT department wouldn't give us the IP addresses internally here. So I think you were talking about in relation to an area in Naperville that you had a question.
Concern about people going on the computers and registering people. How would you ever ascertain whether or not somebody had maybe done that wrongfully or without giving their permission?
So we've had a couple instances of this. I've been here for, I don't know, like almost 8 years now somehow. But, so we've had it before where we've gotten like a cluster of vote by mail applications. And like when we're entering them, we're like, this is kind of interesting how all of a sudden X amount of people have applied. So what we are able to do is we're able to gather that information, and we do send it over to the state's attorney's office because they have other capabilities as far as seeing even more information about who could be there and who can't, and then they're able to investigate that. So far, we have not found anything. We found the one suspicious that Pat had mentioned about the family, but then other than that, we haven't found anything that's been flagged as being a problem by the state's attorney's office.
And we don't have access to the IT addresses for those particular, and under FOIA, if we did, take it up with the state statute, but that's considered personal information that is not disclosable, but we don't have access to it.
All right. I just got a question handed to me that was related to the question I was just about to ask, so I'll read them both. How are the cameras monitoring vote by mail drop boxes reviewed? How frequently by whom? How can the footage be audited? And then somewhat related, if a person brings in a big bag of mail-in ballots to polling station, what is the procedure for the drop box? So any information on those points?
So as Gene stated before, we have one drop box outside of the 421 building. Actually, we have one of our security members here today. We have a camera that points on the mailbox out there that is monitored 24/7 by the security. They have monitors all throughout our department here. And then we have one that's placed outside of the security desk up front when you came in. You'll see it when you leave this evening. But those are the two drop box areas. And then as for drop-off boxes for early voting or day of sites, those are chained to the tables, and they are obviously monitored by the election judges.
Security monitoring, meaning that just no one's going to steal anything, or what's tagged as suspicious?
Is it recorded?
So the cameras at the county building are recorded, and that footage is in the control of the county board. So if someone was looking to, inquire as to security footage for the county complex, then you'd have to put in a request to, the county board, and I can't speak for their policies and procedures.
Drop boxes off-site, is there video, are they recorded? So
Yeah,
you can
there's-
go back and review.
And in our early voting sites, depending on the location where we're at, but to answer your question, no, we don't have cameras on those specifically.
All right, again, we're gonna restrict it to the written questions, so.
Yeah, and those other drop boxes are inside the poll location, which has restrictions and limitations on the videotaping within that poll location. And there's election judges that are there at that time, so the box is not unattended.
All right.
It's a camera that's monitoring.
Security that they're just not stealing mail, or?
Yes, security. Well,
Well, if somebody tampered the box, that would be something that.
So again, the footage is being recorded, and then if anyone has a, investigation that they are looking to do on their own grounds, again, you'd contact the county.
and the
board.
county's got a security, there's a room right next door here that they are monitoring this entire building, including the drop box, and they've got somebody here monitoring that at all times.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Again, we're not going to have a back and forth. All right, how can I receive confirmation of the date my ballot is mailed? Is this done through a private company? How is my personal information protected? I know the clerk already talked a little bit about ballot tracks, but if we could get a little information about how that works.
So voters can sign up for ballot tracks. Typically, before ballot tracks, you could just go on the website and go into, or like the DuPage County website, and search your name, and you'd be able to see if you returned a ballot. You can still do that. But ballot tracks, if you opt into it, you can sign up to receive either a text, phone call, or email, or all three, saying that your ballot was sent out, and then it'll also tell you when your ballot was received and will be counted, or if it got challenged. At this point, I believe only roughly about 3% of the voting population is signed up for it, but it is a great tool. We get a lot of people telling us they like it.
Okay. Forgive me if we've already addressed this in some way, but it's a very simple, straightforward question, so if we haven't, I think it deserves an answer. Where are the ballots received at the county building? Just specifically, where do we receive the ballots?
So the post office delivers mail for the whole building, and it's brought through the mailroom, and that's where we're able to pick it up and secure it.
The post office delivers mail to
They
the
have a
mail.
daily plan where they pick up and deliver.
Which is in this building in the
Yeah.
And the people that work in our post office downstairs have full access to, they can key card in and out of the chambers of the state's attorney's office. They can go pretty much anywhere in the building, so they've been vetted.
All right. Is there a log of how many ballots are received from each? It says MIB location. I'm not sure what exactly they mean by a mail-in ballot location, but in terms of ballots received from polling places, for example, surrendered ballots, do we have a log of how many ballots are received from polling places?
in terms of the number of surrendered ballots?
Well, if vote-by-mail ballots are turned in at a polling place?
No, there's no restriction on what the number of those that would be delivered.
Okay.
And just for the other, those individuals who have access to the ballots all go through a background check. The Department of Justice has certain standards, and we adhere to, so every one of those individuals has been gone through a background check and has been vetted before they have the opportunity, and a number of them get rejected because their background check does not, would reveal something that would call them into question. So it's not just people off the street. These are people who actually, if they're going to have access to the ballots, they have been gone through that process.
All right, so these questions are related to a topic we've already discussed, but just if there's any more information. Why are voters continuing to receive vote-by-mail ballots mailed to their house after they have sold their house and moved? Doesn't the recorder notify the clerk when a principal residence is sold? When someone on permanent vote-by-mail dies, how long until they are removed from vote-by-mail? So I know you discussed a little bit about the voter rolls, but anything else to add on those points?
So something that wasn't covered earlier, and I think it may have been asked, but so every election since 2022, we've been mandated by the state to send a vote-by-mail application for the permanent vote-by-mail program to every registered voter. And yes, I know a lot of you do not like that, but that is the law, says what we've been doing. We did combine it with about 3 or 4 other mailings, so that way you are bothered by us less and it costs less. So it tells you your information as far as if you want to apply for permanent vote by mail. It tells you where the nearest polling place to you is. It reminds you can vote at any polling place in DuPage County. And then it also serves as a voter verification mailing. So if the mailer comes back to us and it says, with the yellow sticker, and it explains that they've moved, we will take the appropriate registration actions as to either making someone inactive, moving them within the county, or sending an additional mailer. So that's all part of that mailing as well.
No, I just,
That's all I got.
no, sure.
But one other thing I think Kevin brought up earlier that people have questions about, a lot of people have college students that are still registered at their parents' house. And the best way of getting your child or ex-spouse or whatever, they need to send us something in writing. And I always say, put it to the attention of someone in our office so you have a name that's tied to that. But we cannot just take Charlie off and stop sending his, application to vote until we're notified for that. So,
Was mine, can I quickly?
Yes, sure. Clarification on that.
So when somebody sells their house, we know when it's a principal residence because they're getting the exemption. I would think, isn't there communication between the recorder's office and the clerk's office that notifies them when a principal residence has been sold, at least in theory, that would lead the clerk to update the rolls to take that person off the voter? Because clearly they should not keep getting correspondence, right, if they're no longer at the house. But what I'm hearing on my end in mass is that people are getting correspondence from the clerk's office, including ballots, in some cases years after they've sold their house. Why does that happen?
I didn't need to know what the specifics of it is. Is there an automatic communication between the two? I don't believe that's the case. There are records, the death records, for example, they'd come over, and the other that Stephanie had indicated. I don't know if a deed itself, we don't get any.
We don't get any sort of that documentation from the recorder's office, no. As far as the other option, yes, unfortunately, we are at the mercy of the post office in sending out the mailers. If you cannot contact any of these people, like Scott had said, to have them fill it out, at least write return to sender on it and send it back to us. That'll make them inactive and work on getting them off the rolls. It's not a perfect system, but it's what we have to do by the law.
Right, and that was the point I was going to just chime in on, that I think Stephanie made the key point there, that there are laws that govern how individuals are removed from the voting rolls and what confirmations are required, because just like you don't want someone on the voting rolls who's not supposed to be there, you don't want to take someone off the voting rolls who should not be removed from the voting rolls. So there is a balance in the procedures let out by state law as to how we have been instructed. This is the documentation required to remove individuals from the rolls. As with many other things, if you have a policy difference with some of those procedures, I know many of you are in touch with your state representatives. There are policies that can be changed, but when we are given a set of instructions as to how voters are removed from the voter rolls, we follow them.
Point of clarification, it was on my earlier question, and I think it flew over Stephanie because it was something that's not often talked about. But list maintenance under NVRA, which requires what you're describing, does not limit you to NCOA. And my question was homestead exemptions, because we all know the counties want more money. So they're buying very expensive data services in the chief assessment officer to grab homestead exemptions that should not be eligible when people have sold the homes. So I would just respectfully ask that your council investigate that, because if the county's paying for it, it's a legal service about a legal public record of transfer. You guys should be able to take advantage of it.
All right, next question. Scott, this is your specialty.
If I could,
Oh,
I have a
Pat.
schedule conflict, and my apologies. I hope that you got the questions, at least as the legal part of it were answered, so I do have to leave 10 minutes ago, so I'm going to be exceeding the posted speed limit, don't tell me.
And speaking of 10 minutes, that's about what we have. We have a stack of papers. I'm going to try to get through as many of them as I can, so we're not going to detour to too much back and forth. Scott, you are the paper expert. Is there a special ballot paper used for printing? Is the paper watermarked, or does it have special coating to prevent any inserted ballot or fraud?
So we work directly with Hart InterCivic, which is our tabulation company. That's who we go through the specifications that they give us. By law, what we follow for the paper that we provide, whether it's vote by mail or for election day ballots. Oh, I think it went dead. So. Okay, it's red. Did everybody hear what I said? So we follow the specifications. We use Hart InterCivic, obviously, as our tabulation, and we follow the bond paper that they require us to print for early voting and for day of ballots. And it's very, very clear, and not to harp on before, if anyone remembers when DuPage County had the fiasco with the ballots where the ballots wouldn't read through because they were too big, we now don't require timing marks on our ballots, so we're pretty proud in the fact that you can vote anywhere in DuPage County, and that's been, I think, a big asset for the county.
All right.
But, so, what else did you want me to elaborate on that?
You didn't answer. The question was about whether they're watermarked or...
Oh, I'm sorry. So they are not watermarked. There's no identifiers on the paper. It's standard paper that is sheet fed, and it is pre-cut for us.
All right.
Can I just ask you the follow-up? Do you know what brand of paper you use? Is it Ancora? Is it made in the U.S.? Do you know the brand?
I would be lying if I knew exactly where the paper came from, but I do know it comes from the United States.
All right. Do you run a mock audit during election? For example, fake signature or incorrect address to see if it is caught? No, we don't. We don't, but that's a fair question, and so the answer is no. We have that's an interesting idea, but it is not a procedure that we have utilized to this point. Well, that's pretty similar to what we already had. Let's see, is there anything that is a new topic? What are the steps to notify the voter or ballots that they've been challenged? Have we discussed the challenge process sufficiently?
Can we get a list of the ballots that have been challenged prior to Election Day?
So voters are notified via letter that their ballot was challenged and for the reasons it was challenged and how they can fix it. They also will get told via ballot tracks if they've opted into it. As far as requesting the data, you are able to request the data. I apologize, I'm not certain if it's a FOIA or what exactly you fill out to do it, but it's like a candidate that can fill it out. I know a lot of you already request data for the daily updates. Yes, thank you, Becky. I know you do. So, but yes, that information can be requested. It is quite common, I know, for the parties to try and go bring affidavits to those that they can to cure the ballots faster.
Chad and John, I'm just going to do a last call if there have been any other questions submitted. All right. If I am 17 and will turn 18 in August by the November midterms, when can I submit an application for vote by mail?
If you are turning 18 in this coming August, you are able to vote in the primary election. So you could submit a vote by mail application now if you're registered to vote, which you are able to do. And as long as you're registered, you can submit an application.
Okay. Vote. No, we
No, we're going to keep going.
Yeah, we're going to move on. All right. Vote by mail and other election-related topics are obviously very important to the public, and this venue is good but insufficient to address all concerns. Could you add a feature to your website where questions are submitted and answers posted to the public? So we do have some areas where questions can be submitted. As far as whether or not we can put that on the website, I guess the answer is obviously yes. We certainly have the authority to post a question and answer segment to the website. Again, not something that we do, an interesting idea to consider. Obviously, just like going through the questions tonight, there's a question of volume and sorting through meaningful content for the voter. But we do have areas to submit questions on our website. We do not, as of right now, post any of those questions and answers to the public. It's an interesting idea to take under advisement.
This is being videotaped. Since this is a public meeting, it will be for access on the county website.
It will, yes. We will post the video of the meeting to the county website. All right. I guess there was another question related to this. I don't know if we addressed it directly head on. Vote by mail can facilitate voter harvesting. Recent nursing home and I think autism transitional programs have shown that. What safeguards do you have in place to prevent ballot harvesting? Do any of the legal procedures in place prevent ballot harvesting. And no is a fine answer.
Are you talking about specifically? I don't know what did. Are you talking about? Are you talking about specifically for nursing facilities or those type? Is that what
I don't know, the question was just asking, like, you know, that there can be ballot harvesting at nursing homes and facilities. Do our procedures address that directly? Stephanie?
I would say other than signature verification, we don't have a specific anti-ballot harvesting law statute that is in place.
No, I will say in the assistant living or care facilities, the people that work with the people that are voting in those facilities, they're administering medicine and all of that, so we're trusting that those people are working with anyone that needs assistance.
Right, and again, just like any concerns one might have about, you know, the policies or procedures of the Postal Service, you know, certain things are outside of the scope of our office's authority. So we have laws that dictate how we handle the ballots when they're in our custody, and we do our best to follow those procedures. I believe we've addressed this in general, but just to clarify if there's any additional information. You said you removed dead voters from the voter roll when you receive a death certificate. What about dead voters when no death certificate is received? There are many instances of voters well over 100 years voting. How do they get removed? Any additional information on that?
So I'm going to address the 100 years a moment. So there's been a common misconception going around the past few years. There's voters with a birth date in our system as 1/1/1900. That is not just in our county. I know it was an issue in Kane County as well. Back in the day when you registered, you did not have to provide a date of birth. So if we have not been able to obtain the date of birth from another format such as the Secretary of State or mailers where we ask for it or asking for it at the polling place, they will have a placeholder date of birth as 1/1/1900 because we cannot proceed in the voter registration system with no date of birth being listed. We have made a large effort to clear those voters out as far as figuring out what the date of births are or making them inactive if we've been able to locate a definitive death certificate or such as that. The other question was about what happens if people, how we're clearing people out.
With who do not have a death certificate?
So what we have been doing as a part of like our off-season projects is we have been looking, starting from our older residents or like older dates of birth that are available and trying to see with various resources that we've been able to come up with if we're able to find any sort of obituary or a different mailing address or something we can try to send a death letter saying, hey, we think you may have died, we need confirmation. Oh wait, but we're trying, like we're putting an effort in. We do eventually sometimes get them from other jurisdictions in Illinois. Unfortunately, some jurisdictions have not been cooperating, but. What were you saying, Jessica?
We have access to people who passed away in DuPage County through the vitalment.
All right, so Stephanie, Pat has already discussed voting fraud a little bit, but since I know from personal experience in our office, you are the point person for a lot of these investigations and notifying the state's attorney in the first place. How much voter fraud do we see? How many are prosecuted, and do you believe we catch the fraud?
So if we get any hint of voter fraud, we do send it as much information as we can over to the state's attorney's office. It is their determination whether or not they proceed with charges or not. That has nothing to do with my feelings about the case, with the clerk's feelings about the case. It's all based on the state's attorney and what they are able to do. As far as processing, I would say we send over something, usually I can't give you a specific number, but I'd say on average we've been sending over anywhere from 2 to 5 things an election, and it varies from a potential weird application to this person died suspiciously close to when the ballot was returned, or something funky happened at the polling place. In 2020, that was probably the year we sent over the most things. I believe we sent over roughly 30 items, and they did prosecute quite a few people. It did not make the headlines every time, and it doesn't make the headlines every time.
All right. Well,
So the percentage of votes that you find irregularities in compared to how many people vote is pretty minimal. They keep stats on that, right?
I don't know if anyone's ever kept like a exact correlation of 0.3% or whatever per election, but I would just say in general, anything we find that looks, it's very minimal, that's what we've been finding. We do checks and balances. That is sent over to the state's attorney, and then I know some of you don't like reporting it to me. I directly give you the state's attorney line, and then they will investigate it without me.
All right, we are gonna have to cut it here, just because, as I said, we do have a hard out at 6:30 because we need to make the auditorium available for the next group to use it. We appreciate, what's that? Well, I apologize. We got through as many questions as we could in an hour and a half. I appreciate all of the participation from the public. We hope that this was helpful. We hope that, thank you. And as I said, we do have a place on our website where you can submit additional questions. If for some reason, you have a follow-up question from tonight, if you don't feel that everything you were looking to learn about was sufficiently addressed, you are still always welcome to reach out to our office with any questions, and we will do our best to inform you the best we can. Thank you, everyone, for coming out, and have a great rest of your evening.